The Harlem Renaissance was an African-American artistic and intellectual movement that flourished during the 1920s and 30s. It brought about the world's most influential creative minds, including Louis Armstrong, Josephine Baker, and Zora Neale Hurston.
The Harlem Renaissance was an awesome period of American history, not just for African Americans, but everybody. And we had a lot of great artists come out of that period. They had a lot of great art programs. So with those opportunities, they were able to create, and they gave them the opportunity to not just create personal art, but to create art on grand schemes and have art shows.
Harlem was a prime destination for blacks moving north after the Civil War. These newly emancipated African Americans wanted to make a contribution to the culture and society of Harlem, which culminated into what we now know as the Harlem Renaissance.
The arts of the time featured bold colors and tribal prints. The artists put effort into painting the African American culture in a positive light, especially by including educated blacks, dancing, and music. Palmer C. Hayden was one of the many influential artists of this time. A common part of his paintings were working black men and women.
Some of my favorite artists are Augusta Savage. I love her work. She did Lift Every Voice and Sing, which was for the World's Fair. Her artwork, it was a sculpture. It wasn't cast, so it was destroyed after the fair, but that's one of my favorite art.
Archibald Motley's paintings featured a lot of bold, warm colors. Both artists, along with the many others, embodied the culture of the Harlem Renaissance.
Jazz was a very influential music style during this time period. It included a lot of improvisation from the artists, making every performance different. There were also more instrumental solos in the music to highlight the band. Jazz performances were usually held in the venue called the Cotton Club, which was a nightclub where blacks could perform for whites.
I would say the biggest influence in regards to being creative in your art form, when you're particularly talking about jazz, around that time in the Harlem Renaissance, you had folks pretty much passing their time by playing instruments, doing new things and exploring stuff. You didn't have TVs and reality shows and stuff like that. Most of the stuff that people did in their pastime had to deal with instruments. So for me, Harlem Renaissance, the influence of jazz and just being able to play, nothing really cued, but just creating. That's the biggest influence for the Harlem Renaissance for me.
One of the many musicians in the Harlem Renaissance was Louis Armstrong. He helped shape jazz by breaking away from the traditional band music and performing more solo pieces, inspiring other artists to do the same.
Louis, I mean, he had that personality, that voice, that I said it, jumped and back then, like, it was different. It was creative. It was him being himself, but doing it in the form of it's sophisticated. He applied it to the art form. He applied it to playing the trumpet. So it's just different, unique.
The music of the Harlem Renaissance is still relevant today. One of the popular songs of the time was "In a Sentimental Mood," written and performed by Duke Ellington and John Coltrane. Artists like Mac Miller and Fabulous have honored the legends by sampling their songs, allowing the younger generation to be exposed to the culture.
Poetry during this time was meant for the people. It addressed racial injustice and problems in the community. Some of the writers were Langston Hughes, Zora Neale Hurston, and Claude McKay. Hughes is probably the most widely recognized and referenced poet and writer of that time. Hurston's work has received critical acclaim, making her one of the most noted female names when we think of literature. A few of the poems from that time were about traditional topics like love and loss, but the creative minds didn't limit themselves to just those things. The poetry appealed to the likes of the community, focusing on the growing culture, the changing environment, civil rights, and poverty, making it very successful.
Over the years, the Harlem Renaissance and its creators helped shape the arts of today. The powerful message in the words and sounds helped people find a new outlook on society. It influenced African Americans to express themselves creatively. It provided multiple outlets for the new generation that could impact the world in a powerful way. However, the sudden influx of non-people of color is threatening that historical legacy. As middle-class citizens move in, lower-class citizens are being pushed out. Homes that carry the memories and lessons learned throughout the growth of African Americans as a people, art that has uplifted the spirits of many, music that has helped blacks express themselves in ways many couldn't understand, poems that highlighted black trials and tribulations for everyone to read are all being demolished one brownstone at a time.
New Harlem is turned into a good area. It's a nice area to live in. For the people who live here, it's a tragedy. They look at it as white people coming in, taking our land type thing. But at the end of the day, life is about progression. You feel me? And that's all that's going on.
Well, when you redevelop houses, in any housing, of course it's good. The issue is why, and this is a standard reply of so many old-timers in Harlem, why is it that the development here was only worthwhile when whites moved in?
Despite these constant changes, the people who remain loyal to Harlem are fighting the good fight to maintain what little remains of their history.